Hello, my name is Joy Harrington. I am your host, and today my husband is joining us on the show again. Actually, your first one of 2023 with me.
That's right.
Happy to have you back on. We are talking about creating freedom in your life with taking steps back. And I really wanted us to talk about this because we live online in a culture that basically says, if you're not taking steps forward, if you're not going bigger, going better, something is wrong with you. And when you're in the entrepreneur space or the online influencer space, there's so much pressure to have more, be more, do more, or you are yesterday's news. And people measure that by external things. They like to measure it by, well, is your house bigger and better than the last one? Well, is your car nicer than the last one?
How big was your launch last time? Well, you got to top it this time.
Totally. And what's not talked about enough is taking steps back intentionally to actually create more of what you want and take a leap forward, because sometimes your next step isn't a step, it's a leap. And taking steps back don't even have to be a step back. Actually, when you think about it, you're the one that defines if it's a step back. And then also, what are you making it mean? So we're here to talk about 2023 for us and how we are intentionally taking quote unquote steps back. We just downsized our house. We've changed a lot up with our lifestyle. We aren't paying for certain things that we paid for last year. It looks like on paper, we're like taking steps back, but actually we've never been this far in like our wealth building and having this much cash flow in our lives.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we want to jump in, but we've got 4 points for you today where we're going to talk about why you might want to take steps back to create freedom. And we'll just share based on what we're doing this year. And let's start by saying what we were doing last year too.
Well, gosh, so that's a great intro. Last year, I took my team on my payments business from 3 people to 22 people, which is a giant growth trajectory. Huge. Okay. And it was 20 and 30% month over month growth. And that type of thing. Now, after a while, that pace is not sustainable.
No.
And there's going to come a point in time where you don't have any more margin in your life.
Yeah.
And I started experiencing that at different points in time where I was trying to avoid, there was this squeaky wheel that I got to get to, and I'm avoiding that. Or people were saying, hey, I reached out to you and I didn't hear from you for 4 or 5 days, or other things like that. So in my life, those indicators, and then there were also people that we have that sit at the table of our life who say, hey, oh, by the way, it's okay to slow down and not try to top your last launch. It's okay to take a step or 2 back, to take a couple of giant leaps forward. And so that and more things, but those little indicators let us know, hey, you know what? Now's time. Let's do this.
Well, and let's back it up even farther, because there are times and seasons for the game. It's a game of life. It's a game of wealth building, and there are specific strategic steps to the game. And almost 2 years ago, when we got that house, our next step was expansion. And we bought that, or not bought it, but we leased that house knowing this is a really big house. It's a really big payment, and it's going to take us to the next level. And we wanted to invest. So we invested a lot of money into that house. We had events. We also invested into a mastermind, right? We were all about expansion and getting to that next level, which we decided at the time required investing in higher amounts of money to bring that expansion. And it totally did.
And where you live. So sometimes it's the geography.
Yeah.
For us, we had to be around other people or be really, really close to people. We chose to be around situations and put ourselves in the room where people are making big decisions. People are going places. And so in order to do that, you have to think expansively. You have to surround yourself with expansive opportunities. It's like, what do we get to do? And what do we get to put in our life so that we can see the up leveling?
So we intentionally stretched ourselves financially, and guess what? Your team totally expanded. It's growing leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
You have the most cash flow in your business you've ever had. It totally worked. But that's a season. And now our next season was, okay, now that we did that, now that we have the expansion, now that we built the income producing machine a lot bigger in the last couple of years, what are we going to do with that? Because you don't want to live on your income forever. Actually, you don't want to live on your income at all. Your income is your seeds. And a lot of people eat their seeds, not knowing that your seeds are supposed to be planted instead of eaten. And so now the next step for us is we've got all these seeds regularly coming in. What do we want to do to both multiply those seeds, but also to plant them and live off of what those seeds produce? And so that's the vision for 2023.
And this is really, really important. If you think back over the last 90 years of westernized society, anytime you look at a 10-year period of time, so we got 9 cross sections of 90 years.
Yeah.
At a 10-year interval, you're going to have on average 2 to 4 years where it's quote unquote a down economy. And then you're going to have 2 or 3 years where it's and then they're going to have a couple of years where it's crazy and the growth is there. So you have the Great Depression and you had World War II, and then you skip a couple generations, you had ups and downs. You have the savings and loan crisis and inflation in the 70s, and oh, guess what, now we're doing that again. And big banks failing in 1987, and then the dot-com bubble, and then you've got the Y2K crazy, and then you have 2001 with the United States getting bombed in September 11, and then you have 2008, and then you have 2020, and then you have all these different big seasons of life. What actually happens is people get lulled to sleep based off of a long period of growth or a long period of the way life has been going. And then suddenly you get smacked upside the head with something in the world changing and you weren't ready for it. And unfortunately, what happens is we position ourselves assuming that things are going to always be the way they're going to be, and then they're not. And so it's actually crazy. You look at the worst depressions, the worst recessions, the worst anything. Some of the greatest businesses were started in 2001 or 2008 or right now in the last couple of years. Some of the greatest companies and the greatest thought leaders began doing what they were doing because they got external stress, something that knocked them out of their comfort zone. And so then they had to intentionally choose to go do something different. So that's where with us, we want to look at any season of life as an opportunity. This particular season, we're going to intentionally focus on doing something different than we were doing last season because we're forward casting. We're looking at what the opportunity is going to be and what we're going to create along the way.
Well, depending on your vision and what you're wanting to build and where you're wanting to go, it's strategy. And you can't do the same thing. A lot of people forget that it's a game and they think they can just keep doing the same thing.
What worked a year ago isn't going to work now. The game changed.
Especially when it comes to building wealth. There are specific steps you have to take. And I'm not saying you have to do it this way, that we're necessarily doing it. However, you have to know how to get to where you want to go. And there's definitely different things you do to get there. It's not all the same. It's not all one thing. So let's talk about what we're doing differently this year to build wealth.
So taking small or sometimes not so small and minor course corrections along the way for us looks like we totally downsized our house and our lifestyle as far as like what we're putting out there towards real estate purchases. That was a huge change for us in the last 2 years.
Well, because in the last 2 years, we were putting out a lot for lifestyle, but we grew the income producing business. And we decided, you know what, if we really want to ramp this up, let's also at the same time reduce costs. Now we have so much extra cash flow that we can start planting these seeds and we know that we're taken care of. It's not going to be this stressful thing. And it's a short-term step for a long-term gain.
Also, pick real estate, for example, one of our big goals is buying a piece of real estate once every year, at least for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So in 10 years from now, we will have at least 10 pieces of real estate that we predetermined ahead of time in 2022. We're going to start with one a year. And that was, again, we had to be in the room. We paid to be in a mastermind.
Yeah.
And that was incredible guidance and counsel. Plenty of people are going to say, well, I can't do that. Well, look at it from a standpoint. First of all, that was me too.
I was going to say, we used to not be able to do that.
How can I possibly set aside enough money to blah, 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 blah. And that's, again, the head trash. So being able to be in a place where it's, well, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And what would need to happen in order for that to be a reality in our business,
Yeah, how could you
in our
think
life?
outside the box?
How could, what things would need to happen in order for us to be able to do that? And so then over the course of the last few months, we challenged ourselves, and this is the new strategy. So that's one.
Step number one, downsizing, reducing costs so that we can multiply our income and actually invest more this year.
Love the word picture you used a minute ago about consuming your seeds. A lot of times, so if you look at, I want to say this a different way. If you look at the cost of saying buying something that you would normally buy in your normal lifestyle, say it's $1,000, whether it's a few really nice dinners, or it's, whether it's clothes or something fun that you're going to do or whatever, and it's a lifestyle as opposed to an asset purchase. One of our coaches challenges us, that's 5 times that in opportunity costs that you said no to. So if it's $1,000, you just said no to $5,000 in potential overall bandwidth that you'd have over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 years. So if we just, again, math, if we say for the next 6 months, we're going to downsize the lifestyle by 10 grand a month, for example, that's $60,000. We just said yes to $300,000 in wealth building opportunities that we're going to bring into our life over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 years.
That's what we call counting the cost. A lot of people look at what it is right now instead of thinking about, wait a minute, add this up over time. What is this actual amount? And here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with it. We even know what our dream budget is someday. And trust me, it's a lot of money, but we also know right now we want to create assets that allow us to live off of that dream budget so that we're not stressing every single month going, how am I going to pay the bills? Because most people don't consider the cost long-term, and they just keep adding in more things that now have to be paid for with their income. And pretty soon they're up to their neck spending their income. They don't have any bandwidth to create any kind of assets that would give them actual true wealth, and they have to keep working. If you don't work, you don't have that income and you can't pay that bill, and it's this never-ending treadmill rat race.
It looks like that there's this law in the world, which is whatever you're doing is going to expand to fit the time you give yourself. Whatever your budget is, is going to expand to fit the amount of money you have.
Yeah.
You're going to, however tight you can make that noose, you're going to make it as tight as you possibly can, subconsciously, not realizing that you're literally choking yourself. And so sometimes it looks like, well, instead of getting a giant bucket, you're going to arbitrarily restrict yourself to a little one.
True.
And so you say, okay, well, if it's 10 grand, we're going to make that 3. And then what happens with that other 7? Well, we've automatically chosen ahead of time some big decisions where that 7 goes. And then we know, well, we have abundance in the 3. Either way, your brain is going to come up with some kind of way to make it work.
Yeah.
And so you restrict the size of your bucket. That then allows you to, quote unquote, not light those seeds on fire.
Yeah.
And instead turn around, stick those in the ground and say yes to 5x or more of what that earning capacity would have been in assets back into your world.
Because what would it do for you to be able to have assets that pay all your bills and you still have your income coming in?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would give you like 10 years back of your life.
Let's go. Love this.
But this goes into point number 2, which is we're focusing on assets to live on as opposed to our income. We want to stop, like the goal for us is eventually to stop living completely on our income and to only live on what our assets are bringing in.
Yeah. The adage that we heard a few months ago, good friend Steve said this: assets before toys, assets before toys. Now, keep in mind, he drove up to our mastermind in this jacked up, it's like 5 feet off the ground, jacked up monster truck that he drove up to the mastermind in going, oh, by the way, this is a toy I just got. And we're all like, oh, Steve, man, what a baller. What a ballsy move here. And, you know, when we were sitting around at dinner and we were chatting and all the things, his thing is assets before toys, assets before toys. What choices had he intentionally made for the last few years up until that point?
Right.
So then he can let his little boy inside go play and buy a monster truck.
Right.
So
those choices don't always look sexy. Those choices don't always feel good. Those choices don't always look like, oh, this next big thing. See, I'm going to show you that I'm, you know, successful because look at this huge step I just took. No, those choices are usually the steps that you go, man, I really have to do that. That feels like a step back.
Yeah. It's the slight edge. There's an incredible book, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And it looks like, you know, you've got that long, gradual sloping curve that then suddenly jumps and goes way up in this, you know, exponential growth. And a lot of your friends and a lot of your peer group and your families look at you with the exponential growth and go, oh my gosh, what did you do?
It's an overnight success.
And a lot of times it was 24, 36, 48 months ago, we did a whole bunch of those little menial decisions, the things that you don't get excited about, that then turned around and prepared your soil for the exponential growth later on down the road. Will Smith, The Pursuit of Happiness. I love the phrases in there where he talks, you know, 4 or 5 different times in the movie. He says, this season of my life, or this part of my life, is called running. This part of my life is called, you know, fill in the blank. It's specific parts of your life where you can say, you know what, let's put a little bow on it. This part of my life is called making deposits. This part of my life is called having a great relationship with my kids. This part of my life is called getting serious once and for all about my health.
Yeah, true.
Or whatever that is. It's not, you chose to do it once and then it happens, is you got to choose that and then repeat it a bunch of times in order to create that habit, that muscle.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was this season of our life, we focus on assets that will ultimately pay us as opposed to that income that we live off of.
Which leads great into point number 3.
Well, hang on. You know, perhaps it's putting the car on Turo. Perhaps it's the, you know, the one house a year, the investment property, like the practicals.
Yeah.
Like it's important to know
For
just
assets.
On the asset side of things for us, we got several specific things that it was over the course of the next 3 to 6 months. These are non-negotiables that we're going to do. And this was warehousing a few $1,000s a month into a cash producing, income generating life insurance policy for me. I wanted to shore up our runway, which I'm getting to later, but it's making sure that we're prepared, that we have that capacity there. So for us, it looked like several specific intentional choices that then we were able to shore that up.
And there's a lot of ways to build assets. And there are a lot of podcasts out there that will direct you to the best asset for you. I'll just throw that out there.
All right.
Point number 3, investing time. We are strategically reworking. I mean, I know you're reworking your business and structuring it so that you can be less in the business. And we're basically streamlining things so that we're not spending so much time in the trenches.
Yeah. One of my friends gave me this life advice, and it was a long, long time ago, but it was, when you are an entrepreneur, it's like you're on that treadmill and you start running. And life's funny because then you subconsciously bump the income up a little bit, or the incline up a little bit. And then you bump the speed up a little bit. And then you bump the incline up, and then the speed. And before long, you're at a 10 and a 10. And you're running like crazy. Well, that's not sustainable, that crazy pace. So then you fall off, smash yourself, hurt yourself, you get exhausted, you break down. And then you're like, well, I'm gonna try harder next time. Subconsciously again. So then we get back on the treadmill and it's a 10 and a 10 before too long. Unfortunately, that's a crazy pace, and it doesn't work. And so you actually have got to get off the treadmill and put time into working on the business as opposed to working in the business.
Well, you want to work yourself out of a job. Most entrepreneurs just give themselves a job.
Yeah. Congratulations. Instead of working for one company, now you have 300 companies that all have a small piece of you.
And it's not 300 companies, but it's, you are everything in the business. You're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the brand, you're the marketer, you're the coach, you're the, right? You're doing it all. And
You're the
like,
receptionist.
yeah,
You're the implementer.
you're like, I can never take a day off. Like, I wouldn't make money. That's not a business. That's a job. You're just, you don't have a boss, but you still have a job. And so you have to get to the point in your entrepreneurship where you don't have a job, where you literally have worked yourself out of a job, but you still have income coming in. And a lot of business owners don't know how to get there.
So you can't work on your business while you're also working in your business. And this next season of our lives looks like us intentionally taking time off. So for example, back to the soil analogy and planting the seeds. There's going to be a period of time where nothing's happening in your field and it's muddy and there's nothing to, go out there to look at your field and it's like,
there's weeds.
That looks pathetic. Like, what's wrong with us? We got to be growing. No,
The only sprouts coming up are weeds.
You've got to have a period of rest. And like, either it's a season where there's really nothing going on out there, because that's the time that you get to create. You get to work on your business. You get to work on you. You get to work on those relationships that you might have not spent as much time on while you were busy harvesting the last season of your life. So like this morning, for example, I wanted to, a couple of days ago, we talked about, making sure that some days I take the kids to school and some days you take the kids to school. Yeah. Well, at this point in time in our lives, 6 out of 7 of those days are you, or whatever. But today was my day. And I went out to the car and we're loading everybody up. And our sweet little Scarlett is like, I want mama to take us today. And we actually had this little moment where it was like, I don't want my daddy. I want mama to do this. And we took it in stride. Yeah. Like we worked through that. Yeah. And it was awesome. And yes, I did take my kids to school. For me, it's important to be able to make that deposit, to have the ability to make that choice. Where today I say, I made a commitment to make a deposit in the relationship with my kids for an hour. And obviously we hadn't done that in a few weeks. And like, I think the last time I took the kids to school, Scarlett wasn't feeling well. And so she stayed home and only Simon went with me. So this was the first time in a few weeks, she's like, Daddy? No, I want mommy. Well, it's important to give yourself that bandwidth. Again, you can't work on your business while you're working in your business. You can't work on your family, on those relationships that matter, on those critical things that make up all the aspects of your life when you're eyeballs deep in all the crazy details. Yeah. So reducing costs this year paid off twofold. It's allowing us to basically have more income to invest, but it's also giving you more time because you don't have to work as much. You don't have that pressure of, I better be growing and expanding even more this year. It's like, no, we've already expanded. Now we're going to reduce to like widen that gap even further. And we're like, we're good. Yeah. It's the want to and the get to and the choose to versus I'm always forced to, and I have to, and I'm stuck. A lot of times when you have that massive amount you got to earn every single month to just keep the lights on in your life and your business and all the things, that gets tiring and that wears you out. Yeah. And that suffocates the life and the joy out of you. So by relieving some of the pressure and by lowering that monthly nut that obligation, you don't have margin in your life where you get to say, you know what, I want to, I get to, and I choose to.
Yeah.
And then that's where the creativity in your brain really kicks in, and you can come from a place of creation and massive growth, as opposed to what are the next results? What's the next deal? What's the next thing we did? That pace isn't sustainable forever.
No, it's not. Which leads to point number 4.
Building a runway.
Ah.
And I look at this from a position of both offense and defense. So, for example, a few minutes ago, I talked about the cyclical nature of our world's economy. You know, there's going to be a down year or 2 or 3 for every year or 2 or 3 that there's a massive, giant growth trajectory. And then there might be a couple of a little bit up, a little bit down, kind of mediocre years. Again, that's general, that's approximate, and that's over the course of the last 70, 80, 90 years of our world. Well, let's talk about defense, for example. If you've positioned yourself and your home economy, which is a business, and your business, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a business, if you've positioned yourself so that everything is ratcheted so tight, where you've got the lifestyle and you've got the payments and you've got the house and you've got all the stuff that you're doing as a family, and all the fun things you're doing, and the trips, and fill in the blank, all the stuff that's going to expand to fit that capacity, and you're going to put into your bucket.
Yeah.
And then there's a 6-week shutdown in our world.
Yeah, there's an emergency of some sort.
Or something breaks down, and you know, the car breaks and you can't go anywhere for 2 weeks, or you know, whatever the situation is, whether it's out there in the world or it's in your immediate world. Somebody gets sick, somebody has you know, something that we got to take care of.
Yep.
Well,
Happens all the time.
It happens all the time. If you don't have defense, if you haven't built up margin in your world to cover that, that's going to feel debilitating. It's going to crush you.
And we would know.
Yeah.
Because we've been there many times.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
And so anytime the pendulum swings, there's going to be some people that aren't ready to either take advantage of it, offense, or it's coming at me and I got to get out of the way. Well, if you don't have that margin, you can't get out of the way, and it crushes you. So, you know, and think about it just in terms of like this. How much money, how many dollars have you set aside that you can access in 5 to 7 days or less without tax or penalty? And how many months of your family economy have you set aside in that bucket that you could access without tax or penalty? It's a sobering reality, but most people in our country don't even have $1,000 set aside in those buckets.
Well, most people are living paycheck to paycheck, us included. We've been there.
We've absolutely been there. No judgment, no stones being thrown. But that's where when the pendulum swings back the other direction, oh boy, what have you set aside as a safety net? And I think also this is really, really important to remove the label of saving money.
True.
Like a lot of times people go like that, it's just not sexy. I gotta save money. There's this shame and this guilt attached with that energy. There's a lot of I have to, and I should be saving more money. I shouldn't be. And that's where it's really like, what's the story you're telling yourself? What are you making it mean?
Well, and the truth is saving money isn't going to actually help you, because we already know, statistically speaking, no matter how much you save during your working life, if you ever want to retire, there's no way you can save enough to actually live on for the rest of your days. Those days have passed. That's an old story that actually isn't financially accurate anymore. And so people are saving, and it's actually not doing them any good, because what are they saving for? What, an emergency to come along and then wipe out your fund? Or then you get to retirement age and you find out, oh my gosh, this isn't even actually enough and I have to keep working. So like, what good is saving? And so instead of saving, people need to replace it with investing.
We're intentionally investing money in certain things right now that 6 months ago we weren't. And in 2 or 3 years from now, we might not either. But the idea of saving money is just simply, we're putting our money towards certain assets now that are really, really important for us. And then that's the long-term goal. You could buy a house 30 years ago for $50,000. That same house today might be $500,000. Well, if I had put those dollars aside and made 1 or 2 or 3%, still wouldn't equal the $500,000. So sometimes it's, well, right now I'm going to put money in certain buckets so that 30 years from now it has grown by 10x. Mm-hmm. And that's also called saving money, but it's specifically investing towards that. On the offense side, when everything goes to crap in our world's economy, there's going to be some amazing opportunities that present themselves before y'all. There were some individuals in our world. So 15 years ago, 2008 happened. And this is where many, many, many people lost everything, right? That they lost huge amounts of their investments, their savings, their business. I think about several people in specific, they had just stopped working. We've got $2 or $3 million in investments, and that's going to be what we live on for the next 20 or 30 years. And suddenly that $3 million gets chopped in half. Like maybe they stopped working in 2006 or 2007, and suddenly half of it's gone. The crazy thing about that same narrative is there's plenty of people that made money in 2007, 2008.
True.
And so when the world goes dramatically the other direction, there's going to be some incredible opportunities, and there's going to be some things that are on sale.
Yeah.
And so then if you've developed that long runway, you can buy those at a discount.
True. So having runway not only lets you prepare for the economy going up and down, because it always does, but it also positions you to be able to purchase when the time is right instead of when you have to.
Yeah. Love it. One last thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Go ahead with one last thing you were going to say. Jason, can you just cut that part where he said, one last thing I'll say, he's going to start over.
So one last thing I wanted to say is about this point is when you're in a relationship and that family economy, family business, all of that, you got to get intentional about defining the dance in that relationship. If both of you are working, if both of you have businesses, both of you are going for big goals, sometimes it feels like now there's always this competition.
At least for time, right? Competition for time, competition for resources.
Exactly.
Especially when there's kids involved.
And that's where sometimes it's helpful to take a step back and say, for this season of my life, for this season in our family, I'm going to be in a support role.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to actively be aggressively going for the next launch, the next thing, the next business, the next whatever. And that then gives your partner margin so that they can exponentially grow on their side.
And that's maybe our fifth step of what we're doing this year is I've been stepping more into that support role, and Peter is leading out. And it's, for a long time, it felt like in our marriage, when we were both building things, it was like 1 + 1 is 2. And we're both just like over here reinventing the wheel, taking steps forward, fighting every single day, an uphill battle. And when I decided to step back and more be in a supported position with you, it's like it exponentially multiplied the efforts. And I think it's just because, there wasn't this like, well, we both need time and we both need childcare and we both need, right? So it allowed you more bandwidth to actually create more.
Yeah. I think, and we've talked about masculine, feminine energy and the 50-50 dynamics and some of those things. Sometimes when both of you are trying to go for big things simultaneously at the same time,
Yeah.
there's not as much room in your total family economy, in your life, in your everything, in order to actually do those things.
True.
And so sometimes it's, one partner hands the other partner the ball and says, I'm going to block for you and you run. Again, football analogy, but or baton handoff or whatever it is. This time I'm cheering for you and you're the one running. Well, both roles are important.
Yeah.
And again, taking like the meaning of it away,
Correct.
like any labels, what are you making that mean? What does it mean to you when inside, you know what? I'd really love to slow down for a little bit.
Right.
And be in a more supportive role. Or right now, I want to run. I want to go for something.
Right.
Either way, that defining the dance in your relationship.
And learning how to be a team, learning how to pull together and build together.
That's where, you get funny math. 1 + 1 is 37 or something like that. In our business, it was, 1 + 2, the team of 3 people is now 22.
Right.
Well, that's where you've got the interesting dynamics. And when you define the dance in your relationship, a lot of times that's where funny, amazing, beautiful math happens.
Speaking of defining the dance, this is something I planned on surprising him with on this podcast. So he's going to have a deer in the headlights look on his face in a second, because I did not prepare him for this. But when we were moving, I came across some letters that Peter had written me. He writes me letters all the time. He's really good at that. It's one of his strong suits. And I don't remember when this letter was. I need to look at the date, but this letter is going to show you how far we've come, because this letter, he wrote me basically walking through this 7-step forgiveness process, which I've talked about here before. And so he was starting it by saying, hey, this is the story I've told myself about you. And it's why we've had issues, or why I've had issues with you. But he was owning the fact, like, it's not you, it's that I've been telling myself this about you. But I'm going to list some of the things, because when I read this letter when we were moving, I was like, oh my gosh, number 1, he was right. And number 2, look at how much I've changed and grown. And so let me just read you a few things that he wrote. Are you ready for this?
No, but let's go.
You said that your story was that I stopped believing in you 4 or 5 years ago, that I don't help you, that I don't want to help you, that I sometimes look for ways to sabotage you, that I was building my business so that I wouldn't need you anymore. You said that your story was that I believe that you are dead weight holding me back, and that, let's see, I married you with the intent to fix you, that you were a project for me, much like a house, right? That I'm always tinkering with. You said your story was that I don't care about our family finances, but I'd rather have a house, furniture, a house cleaner, a car, take trips, make financial decisions without regard for the consequences. Is that your story is that I don't realize how much stuff costs, and if it's expensive, I just get it anyways, that it's bragging rights for me, that I'm always looking for the next Instagram picture or post, and that spending money for me, new dresses, outfits, shoes, etc., gives me this opportunity. Your story was that my social media is my porn, and that it consumes me, and that I'm always looking for opportunities to get on my phone. Is any of this ringing a bell as I read this to you?
It's a lot of stories.
And that I wanted to show off on social media, like what a great life, marriage, kids. And your story was that, I wanted you involved in my social media so that I could show you off, and all of these things. And when I read this and I came across this, I was like, it was so many emotions. Part of it was, I was so sad that I had been in that place, because a lot of those things, there was an aspect of truth there. It wasn't completely true, but there was an aspect of truth there where I was living in this place of wanting validation and wanting to keep up with the status quo, and feeling that pressure to constantly show your success externally, to show it through what you have or what your launch is or whatever that is. I mean, there's so much pressure online to be quote unquote taking steps forward instead of taking steps back. And I was so sad that I had bought into that. And I was so sad that I had portrayed that to you, that I had put you through that. But then I was also like, holy cow, look at how much I've grown and look at how much we've changed and look at how much I've been like saved from, because I don't even recognize that person anymore. Like I've totally changed to what I want in the last like year and a half, 2 years. And a lot of those things that I thought that I wanted turned out to be, they turned out to be an illusion. You're basically sold an illusion of like, ooh, the next level, the next level, the next level, and look how glamorous it is. Look how
Shiny
amazing
object
it
syndrome.
is. Yeah. And you get there and realize it's great, but now you just have to go to the next one. And I finally got to a point where I value our marriage. I value our kids. I value the life that we have together over anything else. And I don't want a big shiny business, and I don't want to be on my phone, and I don't want to be online. And I don't even know where I'm going with this, but I wanted to bring it up to you and read this to you because I wanted to see what it brought up in you too, as we look at like the year we're having and what we're doing financially. It's also amazing to look back at how far we've come.
I'm just remembering that broken, scared little boy inside who wrote you that letter 2.5 years ago. I remember exactly where I was when I wrote that to you.
Really?
Yeah.
Where were you?
We were at our Greenwood Village house
Okay.
in Denver. We hadn't moved to Arizona yet. And I mean, it took me a while to write that because that's a long letter.
Yeah, I didn't even get through like one page.
But I remember that I was coming from this place of like, I have a way of approaching life a lot of times. When something goes wrong, I don't ask for help. I get scared, I hide, and I just say, what's it gonna take? And I'm gonna fix it. And so a lot of times, like again, that's just this programming that I had that I developed as a little kid. I got to take care of this. I got to fix this. I got to be more. I got to do more. I got to, whatever it is, I got to be that person. And ultimately, it's exhausting. And back to those, all those things that I said in that letter and those stories, I think it's easy to develop a story inside of the way life is, the way it is inside.
Yeah.
And I couldn't appreciate myself. So of course I couldn't see ways where you were appreciating me. And the only thing I could do is, well, just keep going. Just keep sacrificing myself, and I'm now this victim. And there's a lot of victim energy in there because it's, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and it's all about you and you're doing this and a bunch of those things. And so when I was able to actually take a step back and look at, okay, what was the actual story I was telling myself? And it's, I'm scared, I'm alone, we're not a team.
Right.
It's you only being selfish and you only going for things that are important to you. And now I'm not prioritized and I'm alone.
But there
all
was an
that.
aspect of truth to that. When I was like really hard building my business, especially the last year of Beachbody, but even then, the year and a half or so after that, when I was coaching, there is an aspect of truth where I was in it for me, and I was in it for the validation that I would feel for achieving and for showing that I had disposable income. And there was definitely truth there. And it was all coming from this need to feel important and to feel like I was special and to feel like I was doing something big, because being a mom isn't enough.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that I'm in this place now where I don't believe that anymore. And I get to now choose what I want to do knowing that I'm enough, but not at the sacrifice of the people I love the most, because I was sacrificing you guys for myself and my dreams.
I just had a really incredible inspiration. And it is like when you're building something, when you're going somewhere and doing something monumental, you got to put blinders on. You have to.
That's true.
In some aspects, you have to put blinders on and say no to a bunch of things if you're actually going to do something life-changing.
True.
And at the same time, when you put those blinders on, you're going to then maximize, you're going to make those blind spots in your world even bigger.
True.
And then those blind spots, a lot of times, like you're going to unknowingly push away your friends. You're going to unknowingly not take care of your family. Like a lot of things just subconsciously happen because you have those blinders on, because you're doing something super big. And that's really, I think that's a great way to wrap this up. There's times in your life to put blinders on to do something big. And then there's a time in your life to take the blinders off and look around and see what have I unknowingly not paid attention to that now I get to go and take care of and get to reevaluate and reassess the progress we made. It's like you're climbing a mountain. It's not one step after the next linear progress all the way up. Sometimes it's you have a short burst of climbing and then you stop and you look around and you see am I on track? Are we going the direction we want to be going?
Yeah.
Did we leave anybody along the way? We've got to allow other people to get caught up with us. And those types of things to then reassess our progress, to then know ultimately that's the direction we want to be going.
That's also the importance of not having both of you in full on, both of you running for things at the same time, because you both can have blinders on. And then who is your wingman that's looking for the blind spots? That's why you want to work together in a team and have one person really leading and running hard in their thing, and the other person's in that support role, because they are your eyes. They are the one that's going, hey, you've got some blind spots over here. Like, hey, maybe this, hey, maybe that.
There may be seasons where you're both actively building, but if you allow that to go on indefinitely, it's like year after year after year of both of you aggressively building. Next thing you know, you built apart from each other. And are you an actual team? Or did you just build separate castles that then you can lob grenades at each other?
We would know.
Wait, what? Did I just say that?
All right. So I'll leave you with, don't buy the hype. Don't buy the hype on social media. Don't buy the hype in the circles that you're in, that you've got to have some big shiny thing and you've got to have the next big thing. And you need to prove externally how successful you are.
And constantly one up that.
Right. And don't allow that hype to cause you to stay in the wrong strategy right now. You might need a different step. Your step forward might look like a step back, but that might be the best strategy for you. And you're not going to see it if your ego's in the way and you're like, but it needs to look big and shiny. So how can you remove that and just actually lean into what's best for you and your situation and your family and your vision and your goals? Because that's what this is all about.
And sometimes taking that 1 or 2 steps back leads to giant quantum leaps forward.
Yeah, for sure.
But you didn't get that progress if you had just constantly been trying to exhaust the progress along the way. It's like, I think about it in terms of how big is your vessel? What do you have in there? Mm-hmm. If you're constantly building, constantly growing, constantly building, constantly growing, you're only using the amount of vessel that you have. But if you take a step back, it's like, you know what? I'm allowing my vessel to expand. And now I've got much more capacity to then grow and build later.
And with that, we are going to wrap up. So I hope you guys liked the episode. If you loved it, tag us on Instagram, share it. We would love to hear your feedback, or send it to a friend that you know could use this too. Tell us what your vision is and your goal is for 2023 when it comes to your life, your relationships, your finances, and what you're going to be doing to get there. We would love to hear and cheer you on. We'll see you back on the show next week. Thanks.